when I got to Omaha the first time, I realized that it was much bigger and uglier than I ever could have imagined. And I took some heat. I had like a death threat, and I was followed.
From who?
A woman. It was funny. I was staying with a friend of mine. I told my friend, I'm going to look into this thing, and I'd known him for many years since I was a teenager. And I said, I'm going to look into this thing. We hadn't hung out in a while. I said, I'm going to look into this thing and see what's happening, and then then we'll hang out and go do some stuff. And so I told him, I went, the first night I was there, we were having dinner. I told him what I was looking into, and he looked at me like, are you sure? And I said, well, yeah, I'm gonna check this out. So I was staying at his place when a woman came to the door and said, he was there. So, and she said, you're in a great deal of danger, and they're going to kill you. And she was a freaky looking woman. And now my buddy had started, I'd been there for about a week, and my buddy had started to come around with some of the stuff that I was reporting back to him. But then that woman coming to his door and dispensing that, it made both of us, we didn't sleep very easily that night. But here's the thing, by that time, I'd come to the conclusion this was a huge network. It had been in operation for at least a decade, and multiple children were destroyed. And I don't have a family. I'm not married. I don't have children. I can take risks that other people wouldn't be comfortable with taking risks. And I just said, this is too evil. And it was covered up by both federal and state law enforcement and authorities. And I just said, what was done here was just too evil. I'm not going to quit. If I get killed, I get killed. I mean, I'm not going to quit doing this. I'm going to expose this to the best of my ability. And that started my odyssey.
Did this go on? Did the harassment from whoever it was continue?
There was harassment. I think a lot of harassment was thrown at me the first time I was there. And they thought, well, he's probably a journalist from New York, and, we'll never see him again. But there was harassment subsequently, but nothing like it was initially. I mean, that was the only time I had like an overt death threat, was the first time I was there. But I was so committed to doing it at that point that whatever difficulties I was going to have, I was willing to endure them to get this story out. Because, as I said, this network that I wrote about in the Franklin scale, it had been in operation for about 10 years, and it had destroyed scores of children. And it had been covered up by federal and state law enforcement. And I just said, this cannot stand. I mean, something has to be done about this. And I'm going to write a book about it, and hopefully I can get it published. And I was represented by a relatively big literary agent at that point, and I gave them the book proposal. And then within 2 weeks, I was no longer a client of theirs. And then I knew James Fitzgerald. He was an agent. He's since passed away. And he ran a good agency. I mean, he had published a number of popular books, or facilitated the publishing of a number of popular books, and he couldn't sell it. I mean, I'd met with some publishers, and they were just concerned about libel. And finally, there was a small publisher outside of Eugene, Oregon, that was willing to. And by that time, there were, and I don't know if your listeners and viewers are familiar with the machinations of a grand jury, but with a grand juries are notorious for covering stuff up, because a special prosecutor is picked to prosecute a grand jury. And grand jurors are just citizens that have shown up for jury duty that have been funneled to a grand jury. So, and the special prosecutor calls the witnesses and also picks the evidence that's shown to the grand jurors. And it's not adversarial, it's just one-sided. And then everything is sealed, and it's against the law to talk about it. So there was a New York judge that said, Supreme Court judge that said, special prosecutors have so much power over grand jurors that they could get them to indict a ham sandwich. And so with this case, the Franklin case, I managed to get the sealed grand jury and testimony of one of the grand juries, and I bring the reader right into that grand jury, and I show how corrupt it is. And because that grand jury declared that all these kids getting abused was a carefully crafted hoax, but it didn't even name who the hoaxers were. It kind of pinned like the hoax on a bunch of drug-addled kids, which was, I mean, and then a federal grand jury said the same thing. That was equally corrupt. And there again, you just need one guy, one special prosecutor who's corrupt, and then he can get the grand jurors to do whatever they want them to do. So these two grand juries had said that there was no child abuse. But after I got the sealed testimony and exhibits of one of those grand juries, I mean, at that point, I was really able to write the book. Because the exhibits gave me a lot of information. And then I was able to show just exactly how one of the grand juries had been co-opted.
Wow. Let's talk about a little bit about what was going on there. So there was alleged abuse. It was widespread series of crimes, including devil worship, cannibalism, drug trafficking, and CIA's arm deals. Okay,
so that comes from the Wikipedia page.
Okay.
And the Wikipedia page is farcical. If you go on my website, I go to I've got a link to the Wikipedia talk page, because you've got like the Wikipedia page and then you've got like the talk section. And that Wikipedia page has been taken over by people that want to make this nonsensical.
Okay.
And there's pages and pages and pages of debate. And actually, I called Jimmy Wales, who started Wikipedia. I'm a pretty good investigator. I was able to get his private cell phone number. And I called him up and I said, you know, you're my last hope for making this Wikipedia page read realistically. And he was completely unwilling to help me. I'm going to release that conversation on my website in the relatively near future.
What did he say? Why wouldn't he?
He said that, well, I'm going to look into it. Send me some emails. And so I sent him some emails, and then he said that he didn't get them. I texted him.
I don't understand why there are so many people in powerful positions that protect pedophiles. Why would you not want to protect the children? Why does everybody in a powerful, I guess I shouldn't say everybody, but it seems to me the more I dive into this subject, the more I see the more elite status you have, the more compliant you are with pedophiles and sex trafficking and sex exploitation. What is it?
Well, I think people reach a certain plateau, socioeconomic plateau, and they're afraid of losing what they have, and they're afraid of not getting what they want. I mean, I think it's that simple.